Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's keep week 36 going with today's Third Age Thursday. It's our time to revisit those familiar and not so familiar stories of the Third Age, though again, for the rest of this series, it's definitely a familiar story. Last week, we listened in at the Ivy Bush as the Gaffer kept trying to knock down these urban legends about everything from the drowning of Frodo's parents to the amount of Bilbo's wealth. Now, today we return to the Ivy Bush, for a little bit at least, as the Gaffer speaks of the coming party. And Sandyman has opinions. But the highlight for today? Seeing our old friend, the Grey Pilgrim, again, for the first time. Now, when we last left him, the Gaffer had failed to convince his audience. After all, the urban legends surrounding the story of Bilbo's wealth were too widespread to counter with mere facts. But he is likely enough been adding to what he brought at first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home. And look at the outlandish folk that visit him, dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering conjurer, Gandalf and all. You can say what you like, Gaffer, but Bag End's a queer place, and its folk are queerer. And you can say what you like about what you know no more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the Gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. If that's being queer, then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to a friend if they lived in a hole with golden walls. But they do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents. Mark you, presents for all. This very month, as is. Well, that very month was September, and as fine as you could ask. A day or two later, a rumor, probably started by the knowledgeable Sam, was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks, what is more, such as had not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century. Not indeed since the old Took died. Days passed, and the day drew nearer. An odd-looking wagon, laden with odd-looking packages, rolled into Hobbiton one evening and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamplit doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End. At the end of the second week in September, a cart came in through Bywater from the direction of Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it all alone. He wore a tall, pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the brim of his hat. Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill. It had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labeled with a large red G and the elf rune. That was Gandalf's mark, of course, and the old man was Gandalf the Wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party. Hence the excitement of the hobbit children. "Gee for grand!" they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally, and never stopped long. But neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his firework displays. They now belonged to a legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You'll get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The young hobbits stared at the door in vain for a while, and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come. Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window of a small room, looking out west onto the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden, snapdragons and sunflowers and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo, "I am very fond indeed of it, and of all the dear old Shire. but I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go on with your plan, then?" "I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good saying any more. Stick to your plan. Your whole plan, mind, and I hope it will turn out for the best. For you, and for all of us." "I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday and have my little joke." "Who will laugh, I wonder?" said Gandalf, shaking his head. "We shall see," said Bilbo. Now, we get a reminder of just how provincial and parochial the hobbits can be. I mean, the mere fact that dwarves and Gandalf visit Bilbo means that his place is queer, and that Bilbo, along with Frodo and others, are queerer. That makes them strange and odd in the eyes of these simple and relatively close-minded hobbits like Sandyman. We're also given just a very small glimpse of the larger scope of Gandalf's job when we're introduced to him. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. Well, honestly, at this point in the story, even we don't really know what his real business is, nor how dangerous it will be for him, let alone for those in contact with him. Now, last, we get a mention of Bilbo's plan for the party. Now, Bilbo seems focused on the joke part of it, that is, disappearing in front of everyone. But as we'll learn later, it's Bilbo's giving of the ring to Frodo that is the only worthwhile part of the plan in Gandalf's eyes. Folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. Come back next week as final preparations are made and everybody living nearby shows up, some of them twice. Check out patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we continue our new experiment on Fridays this series. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Please follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and follow @Tolkien Times on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.